Okay, I guess it helps to turn the mic on. So let me do this again, since my dogs are the only ones who heard it the first time. Welcome to the Classroom 2.0 live session today. We're so glad that you've joined us, and I'm Kim Case, and I'm pleased to co-host today with Peggy George. And Lorna Constantini is not with us today. She had a family commitment. Today we're going to be talking about Web 2.0 tools and a demonstration with Steve Dembo. And each week we gather to discuss ways to use technology tools in the classroom to engage students. And our broadcast consists of a full session that's recorded on the live site at live.classroom20.com. The full video, audio recording, and chat log links are posted there later this weekend. The topics posted there as well for each week so that you can bring some ideas and strategies and suggestions to share. And let me go ahead and review some of the features in the Illuminate session that we'll be using today. The participant window just below there is a little green hand with an arrow on it. And if you would like to raise your hand to share something or ask a question, you'd click on that, and then at the time we'll be able to give you the mic privileges. Just below the hand, next to the hand, are two emoticons, the applause symbol and a thumbs down symbol. And during today's sessions, we'll be asking some poll questions, and you'll cast your vote using the check mark or the red X. And you won't click anything on the whiteboard at that time. You'll use those little symbols next to the blue door. And the blue door, if you need to step away from your computer, just click on the blue door, and then we'll know that you're not available at that time. If you're not able to see the chat or the way the session is laid out, you can click on View and then click on Layout. Sometimes it's locked and you need to unlock the feature. Then you can resize the individual windows, or you can choose one of the default layouts that are in the Illuminate layout section. We offer closed captioning features today by Tammy Moore, and we're very appreciative that she does this for us. So if you have colleagues who are hearing impaired, please let them know that they can join us in the session and view the closed captioning text. All you need to do is to click on the little blue CC in the toolbar, and then you'll be able to see the text that Tammy is typing. So please share that with your colleagues. And if I believe it's also showing in the recording, so they can, if they can't participate live, they can join us via the recording. In the chat window in a moment, or on the, if you've already done that, great. And we're going to be using the laser pointer tool in just a minute. The laser pointer is the blue wand with the red starburst. And I'm having some bandwidth issues. Just a second. Okay. If everybody could please click on the laser pointer and then indicate their location in the world, on the world map. Looks like many of us are having bandwidth issues, so I'll give it just a second for Illuminate to catch up with us. And I'm seeing some lots and lots of dots throughout the world. Australia, out by Hawaii, out Europe, wonderful places. We're so glad that you've joined us today. So I'm going to go ahead and go on. So I want to make sure that we give lots of time to Steve. And we just want to let you know that on the live.classroom20.com site, when you click on the Archives and Resources tab, it takes you to the blog post that we've posted each week. And on the slide is an example of one of the posts that we had recently with our special guest Shambles Guru that session. And you can see that the recording links are posted there, as well as an RSS feed that I've circled. And you can subscribe to the RSS feed by clicking on that RSS feed button and then adding it to your favorite reader. And all of the links that we share during the session in our GLAM links, for your glamorous co-hosts, of course, those GLAM links and all of the recording links are posted in one blog post. We combined them all. So please check that out when you have a chance, and make sure that you subscribe to that so that you don't miss any of our great links and resources that we share with everybody. I know that's not what GLAM stands up for, but I pretend it is. Okay, now we're on to the polling questions. And okay, let me just ask you the polling question then. And we'll pretend that it's showing. Have you ever seen a Prezi presentation? Have you ever seen a Prezi presentation? You click on the green check or the red X that's right by the door, the blue door under the participant window. Have you ever seen a Prezi presentation? If you have, click the green check. If you have not, click the red X. I'll give it just a bit more time, and then I'll give you the poll results. And it looks like in this group, 42% of us have not seen the Prezi presentation, and about 50 of us are familiar with a Prezi presentation and what a Prezi presentation can do and what it looks like. So that's wonderful. Towards the end of the show, I think you'll be impressed for those of you who have not seen one. And the next poll question, let me go ahead and reset this, is have you ever used Prezi to create presentations? Have you or your students ever used Prezi to create a presentation? Okay, and let me get those results. And for poll question 2 at the bottom, it looks like 65% have not used Prezi themselves or with their students, and about 16% have. So that's going to be fantastic. We're going to learn about that, and Steve's going to talk a teeny bit about how they use it and ways that he has used it personally. So let me go ahead and go on. And I'm pleased to introduce to you today Steve Dembo, who is with Discovery Education, often referred to as the Den. And we're so glad that he has joined us today. And Steve, welcome. And could you start out first by giving us just a little bit of your background and some of the things that you do for the Den?
Sure, happy to. You guys, I see the microphone moving along, so I'm assuming you guys can hear me. I am the online community manager for the Discovery Educator Network, which basically means I manage the blog network, the Den website, and so on. The Den, for those of you that don't know, is a online community for people who are customers and people who participate with Discovery Education, which is well over half the schools in the country. And even if you don't happen to be a current subscriber, there's still ways that you can participate as well. We have about 6,000 or so star discovery educators right now across the country, and about over 100,000 people that participate on the website. It's a pretty phenomenal group to be a part of. And I get to handle the online stuff. Like I said, the website, the blogs, podcasts, and of course webinars. We do, just like this sort of thing, over 100 or so scheduled webinars per year, and then a whole bunch more beyond that. And one of the things I do get to do for Discovery Education is I do also kind of keep an eye on new technologies, see what fits into our community, what fits into education, what fits in with Discovery itself. And one of the ones across my desk, I don't even know how long ago it's been. I don't think it's quite been a year, but the one that made an impact on me, at least pretty darn quickly, was Prezi. There are a lot of Web 2.0 sites out there, and most of them do something very, very, very similar to other Web 2.0 sites. You know, you see things like Digo and Dig. You see things like, you know, Illuminate and View and GoToMeeting and WebEx and all those you can kind of lump together. And while Prezi, I suppose you could call it a presentation tool, in my opinion, it's one of those very, very few that really break the mold and give you a new experience. It allows you to kind of take the experience and interact with it, and you know, the presentation experience and interact with it in a new way. And that's one of the reasons why I kind of feel it's significant. I wouldn't go as far as to say it's the end-all, be-all, the best tool for education versus you know, any of these other things that are out there. But in my opinion, it definitely falls under the auspice of significant because it really is one of those game changers per se. I always forget. Do I need to actually uncheck this before in Illuminate before anyone else can talk?
No. You can. We can have people that are talking while you are talking as well, or we can have multiple people able to talk.
Okay, cool. I just wasn't sure whether I needed to click that to undo. I always forget that with Illuminate. Okay, so where do you want to take this from here?
Well, go ahead and start talking about the Web 2.0 tools and using Prezi, and we can do a web tour or an application sharing, whichever you prefer.
Yeah, well, I prepared a browser window that has some examples open already, so if we can share that, that would be fantastic.
Okay.
And I'm seeing some great questions that we're going to definitely cover.
Yes, and I'll be trying to grab all those questions. If you click on the blue globe, Steve, in the moderator toolbar, it'll open a window, and then you can paste in the link that you want to go to.
Oh, can I just show my browser window?
Oh, yes, you can do it that way, too. If you click on the picture, something with a little, like, yellow triangle on it, the little screen with the yellow triangle.
Screen with the yellow triangle. I see.
In the top.
Green triangle. So share a selected application. How about we do that one?
Yes,
I'm
that's
going to
the
do
correct
Firefox.
one. Yes.
All right. And you can see my Firefox window right now?
Yes, we sure can.
Fantastic. And let me just go ahead and fill up this. Oh, no, it's working. All right, great. I believe it was it Paula? Paula shared this, that she had a link sheet with some Prezi examples and how-to, so I threw that up there. Basically, for those of you that aren't familiar with Prezi, it looks like a lot of you kind of already are, but let's take a quick look at one. The basic concept of Prezi, where a lot of people compare it to PowerPoint because it's a way to do presentations. But the place where it differs is PowerPoint and Keynote and all these other sites are very much based in slides. You have slide 1, you have slide 2, you have slide 3, you have slide 4. You can make them nonlinear, you can provide links between other slides, but it all boils down to slides. Prezi gets rid of those borders and makes it so that you can kind of look at your presentation more like you would a piece of art or a poster or something without borders. So this is a presentation of architecture that someone created, and you can see this is the entire thing. And while it's a little hard to see the details of it, each one of these little points, can you guys see my mouse? or not? Probably not. Each one of these little points is, in a sense, think of it as a slide. Oh, you can see my mouse. It's great. So, for instance, if I click to the next point on the path, I may just completely crash my browser. There we go. And you may not get the full effect, the zooming motion of it, but suffice to say, well, because we're doing screen sharing, it may look a little abrupt per se. It's actually extremely fluid. That's one of the things about it, is it's very, very, very fluid. So now all of a sudden we can read the text. We can see what this person has to say. It looks, at this point, it could look kind of similar to a PowerPoint presentation. But then let's say we want to get more detail on this little chart. If we click in next, it's just going to kind of zoom in there. If we want to zoom in even more, we can do that freehand. So I could just, with my keyboard shortcut, I can zoom in, and with my mouse, I can just navigate around as need be. And then if I click next, it's just going to keep going to the next point in the path that I have laid out. So in that way, it kind of differs from PowerPoint in that, PowerPoint is very, very, very structured. And while Prezi does give you a path to follow, a linear path to follow if you want, you can also choose to go freeform and just kind of navigate your way around. With every point in Prezi, with every object, if you double click on it, it will just zoom in on that place. So if we zoom out some, and I wanted to just kind of zoom right in on the cat, I could double click on the cat part, or unless this is one large, oh, horrible example. This is actually one really large image, so I might not be able to do that with this one. Anyway, so we'll come back to that. But that's the main way that it differs, is you kind of start to look at your presentation as an object overall instead of just a series of instances. I've just said that we do a real quick little how-to. I'll just show you. I'm not going to show you things in detail right now, just because we do have a limited amount of time. But the main way that it differs also in PowerPoint is the way the toolbars work. The analogy that I like to use, and I saw a few people in chat say that Prezi seemed to be pretty confusing. I think the main reason that people consider Prezi to be confusing is that we are so embedded and so used to Microsoft and Keynote and those tools like that, and PowerPoint and such. Here's the analogy that I always like to give, or at least the example I always like to give. If you want to change the font in PowerPoint, how do you do it? Well, you highlight the font or the part that you want to change, and then you go to those numbers and you change the numbers. And if you want to make it bigger, you make it a bigger number. But what do those numbers actually represent? There's going to be some smart aleck in the window that's going to know, but for the most part, nobody even knows. Nobody has any idea. It's not inches, it's not centimeters. Who knows exactly? Maybe it's pixels, but what does that really mean? None of us really know, except for maybe web designers. The fact is that those numbers are pretty arbitrary as far as most of us are concerned. And why do they skip from 10 to 12? Why do they skip from 32 to 38? Why do they skip up to 44? What happened to all the odd numbers? Why do those numbers get the shaft? Who knows? In Prezi, you do it just a little differently. If you click on an object, first of all, you click on place and then click on an object, it gives you these little zebra-striped concentric circles. The middle one is how you click and drag. That's it. No anchors, no nothing like that, no worrying about clicking off of it. Just click on that big old target, click and drag. The outer one is the one that you use to spin. So if you want to make it a different direction, you can do that. If you hold down the shift key, it'll lock it into different angles, so you can get it just right if you want it exactly up and down or that sort of thing. And this middle one is how you make something bigger or smaller. There's no pixels or points, there's no numbers. You just make it the size that you want. If you want it to be little, drag it little. If you want it to be big, drag it big. And that may seem, this little zebra-striped concentric circle thing may seem really, really strange to us. But the fact is that the only reason it seems so strange to us is because we're so locked into those PowerPoint numbers. That's where our entire scheme was kind of built around it. Now, imagine if you were a kindergarten student and you were looking to create a presentation or create a slideshow or something along those lines for the very, very first time. Now, imagine sitting down and looking at something like this versus something like PowerPoint. Which one do you think is going to be more intuitive? Which one do you think is going to be easier? Which one do you think just makes more sense? You see what I mean? And that's kind of the perspective that I'm coming from. I think that our association with PowerPoint is, a lot of it is just because we've spent so many years getting used to it, and whereas Prezi kind of changes things around. It's simplistic. It does not have anywhere near the features you're going to find in a well-established piece of software. You know, for instance, if you go to text, you have 3 choices: body, strong, head. That's it. This is head, this is strong, and this is body. That's it. You don't get the chance to change the color. You don't get the chance to change the font setting. You have those 3 choices. You do with Prezi, actually, they recently incorporated something called styles, so you could change a new style sheet. But with each of these style sheets, you're still only going to have 3 choices. You don't like them? That's all right. That's the choices that you get. If you want to express your creativity in other ways, if you want to express your creativity more, there's lots and lots of other ways to do it. You can also add in things like lines. If you want to draw a line, no problem. If you want to add in an arrow, no problem. If you want to highlight something, you can certainly do that too. And then each of these, you can control the same way that you would control one of these other, the text object, where you can spin it around if you wanted to. You can drag it larger or smaller, or if you want to just delete it, just click delete. So now I can get rid of each of these. Now, in this case, I want to make sure that I'm getting the highlight and not the other piece, and there we go. Now, as you can see, this looks very different. The toolbar is just this, set of bubbles. The text is, simple, and that there's only 3 formats. Lines, that's all the options you get. But where it starts to get kind of powerful is in the way that you can layer things and the way that you navigate around. So, for example, if I wanted to start off with people seeing this how to create a Prezi, and then go to the lion, and then go to the cheetah, what I do is I create a path. So I'll click over here, and I want my path to start right here with the create, so I click on that. And you'll see that a little 0 pops up. And then I want it to go to the lion, and then I want it to go to the cheetah. And I just click. And you see how it's adding all of these little pieces, all these little lines in between them? If I want to put something in between, so I want to say, let's learn about animals. I can go back over to path, and I want that to appear between how to create a Prezi and the lion. All I have to do is grab this little midpoint and drag that over there, and now all of a sudden it's going to renumber it accordingly, and it's going to be there. Let's say I don't want to go to that. I change my mind. I want to get rid of that one. Just drag it off, and it'll just disappear. And that's how easy it is to kind of just jump around and lay out your path. Now, of course, once you start going to a lot of different places and maybe bouncing back and forth, things can get a little convoluted. And then all of a sudden it gets a little hard to see what's what. Well, so long as you just kind of click and drag it out, you can usually tell where we're going, or absolute worst case scenario, clear out your path and just redraw it. Not a problem. So I want to go there, there, there. Oh, I forgot to put this one in the middle. I can. And then let's just see what that looks like real quick. All I got to do is go out to this main one, and I can use these little arrows down in the corner to start on the path. Oh, let me start at the beginning. How to create a Prezi. Let's learn about animals. There's my lion. There's my cheetah cub. Now, if I want to break the path and go to any little piece of this independently, all I got to do is double click on it, and it will just zoom in on that. So now if I zoom out and I want to just go to strong immediately, which isn't in our path at all, I can just double click on that, and it will just go straight to strong. So you can, using keyboard shortcuts and your mouse and such, you can kind of go with this in any order that you want. But the path is the main way that you kind of lay it out. Bruno mentions it does seem kind of linear with the path set. That's absolutely right. It is. The path gives you your ability to be linear if you want to. If you don't want to be linear, you can just drag this in any which direction and double-click on things to call them out, or you can then zoom in or zoom out and go in any direction that you want. But if you do want to be linear, you certainly can, and it can create sort of a slideshow effect. I want to show you just another example of what this kind of looks like, and then we'll come back over here. I'll show you some tips and tricks. This is one I actually just found. It's a presentation about e-commerce. And by the way, yes, because I'm sure somebody asked this in there, for every Prezi, you can share out the URL to view it full screen, or you can just recently they added this. You can get the embed code, so you can embed it in your own blog or your own site. So they do have a bunch of options. Actually, they had embedding before, but it wasn't done very well. It's much better now. So this is their e-commerce presentation. And so far, what about e-commerce? Let's sell on the web. This looks very, very linear. And now you can kind of see, first choose your system, and you can see that we've got this slide here. When we click on the next one, it's actually going to zoom into part of that slide, and then move on to the next one, and then the next one. Now it's zooming out again. But here's the trick of it. While it may be linear and we're kind of moving around, this is all part of a larger work. And if we zoom out, we can see what that larger work looks like. See? Their presentation is a monopoly board for e-commerce. And we started off right over here. Let me move this over here with want to play e-commerce. That was the first point on the path. And then we started moving our way around the board. And while some people will probably pick up on that as you go through, once again, it's kind of a powerful way to do that. It's looking at that presentation as something larger, as kind of like a work of art. If we wanted to jump at any point, let's say to UPS, we can just double-click on it, and it's going to zoom in and rotate around, and then we can just go on from there. Or, if we wanted to follow the path, that's what those arrows are for, and it will take us to that point on the path, and we can just keep moving around. Oh my gosh, there's so many questions. I'm going to try and bounce in and kind of keep an eye on questions as we go. Question about can you download it? Yes, you can download it. When you download a Prezi, it gives you a player to go along with it. So you get the entire presentation along with all the media that you had in there and the player to go along. It works actually incredibly well, and I've used it several times where I wouldn't have had internet access. The only stipulation is that this is a freemium model, and I believe, at least unless they've changed it recently, you can only download 3 presentations per account for free. You can create an unlimited number of Prezis so long as your total media does not exceed 100 megabytes for free, and you can download up to 3. I would never suggest that you would create multiple accounts, but I've heard rumors that some people have done that. What else? All right. Let's go to one other example. No, we're not going to do that one. This one right here. So the other piece that I like about Prezi is visually. And yes, you might be able to emulate this with PowerPoint, but I like the way you can kind of look at something overall and then move around it in and out of it. So for example, this is something that I used in a presentation to demonstrate how embedding works. So we can just walk through this. If I wanted to take Obama's inauguration speech, this is how it pulls up in YouTube, right? Now, the speech itself is a video. And as you can see, as soon as I go to an embedded video in here, it will start playing. And it actually plays incredibly smooth. Now, if I actually want to embed it, I go over to this part of the YouTube page, and you see how it says the embedding, the code right there? While I can only see part of that code, if you were to actually copy it, there's actually a whole lot more code to it. And now you see how I put the full code behind that other one right there. So it looks like we're kind of going through it to see the rest of the full code, and then we come back out. So while you may not be able to see the full code, we can go ahead and copy it, and then we go over to here, we embed it in, and this is what the final result looks like. And then if I wanted to, I could move back over to the Embaba part of it, and I could actually have that be playing if I wanted to. So you kind of get the idea that it's not just a matter of the scrolling kind of is flashy and all that. It really does kind of serve a purpose as well if you do it right. It gives you the ability, like for instance, in some sense, if you think of it, it's kind of like a pop-up book, where you start off looking at the whole frame, and then you're going to view it on just one window. Maybe open it up and see what's behind it. And it's very easy to do that, or to just key in on a specific part of an image. And the way you do that in Prezi is by using things like frames. I showed you with the path that you can choose any object in Prezi and put that on your path. But what you can also do is you can also create frames around things. So this is a frame. It's a little hard to see, that one. Here, let me do a different one that will be a little bit easier to see. Frame, we'll do a circle. Okay? So I draw a circle. Now, this, and I'm drawing multiple circles. This is an object, just like before. I can put that on the path. I can draw it, make it larger and such. And what I can do is I can use that to kind of bundle things. So, for instance, if I wanted to, I could put this around all of our objects. And then when I put this into the path, let's say we want to go here second, it's going to give us the opportunity to kind of zoom out in sort of an arbitrary sort of a place. So if I start off at the beginning and go to the second one, let's go backwards. There we go. Now we can kind of get that little bird's eye view. Now, unfortunately, though, you do see that big ugly circle when you do that. And maybe you don't actually want to see it. Maybe we want to zoom in. You know, we've got our cute little kitty right here. Maybe we want to just zoom in on the cat's, on the cat's face. You know, we want to be able to talk about the facial features, about the fact that the cat has whiskers, ways that this is similar to a regular house cat. So what we can do here is we can create a frame, and we're going to do it based on the current view. We're zoomed in. We want a frame to fill this up. So I'm going to create this frame. Now you can see it's white. It's a little obnoxious, but what I can do is I can first add that to the path. So now we're ending up on, we're right now, our path is going from create a Prezi, let's learn about animals, lion, cheetah. I want then to go to this little frame to zoom in on the whiskers, which is all well and good. And you can see that this will work. Lion, and there we go. And now we're going to zoom in. But now it's all white and faded. Well, just like in PowerPoint, you do have these tools where you can make things go up or down. So right now the frame is on top of the cheetah. Right now it's below it. And because it's below it, when we go over to it, instead, we're not going to actually see the frame. The frame is effectively invisible. Let's learn about animals. There's the lion. There's that. And now we're going to zoom in on the frame, but because it's below there, we're just zooming into that point. We're not actually going through. And now we can actually just zoom in on those. If we actually wanted to go in through the cheetah's nose into something, kind of do a magic school bus sort of thing, maybe go inside and look at the cheetah's digestive system, I could actually do that. If I zoom in far enough, we'll actually go past that, and now we've got a whole new world, in a sense, that's underneath there. And if I were to put in text, like, now we're inside a cheetah, we could add that to the path as well. Path, and I'm going to add that last. And now, when we go to play this, we're going to start off with let's learn about animals. There's the lion. There's the cheetah, zooming in on the whiskers, and now we're going through. And now we're inside the cheetah. Outside, inside. Do you see what I mean? Now all of a sudden, we've got a whole other layer of things that we can do, because now not only can we skim along the surface of our poster, for instance, if we're doing the Monopoly thing, we could actually go inside these houses and have an entire new section inside the house. And yes, technically we could emulate that in PowerPoint with graphics and screenshots and this and that. It just doesn't have the same kind of flow. It's like with PowerPoint, you could emulate Flash and make a cartoon of sorts and such. But really, that's not what it's designed to do, whereas this is what this is designed to do. You see what I mean? It's kind of fun. Yeah, exactly. It's not quite the same thing. Oh, Bailey's got a fifth grade project to share. That'd be great. Absolutely.
Yes. We'll have some time to share. So, can you share briefly the PowerPoint that you or the Prezi, excuse me, that you created for NEC?
What I created for NEC? I'm not sure. Actually, I'll open that one up. I'll be honest. I don't think personally that that's a very good example of Prezi. Just for one reason, in that I feel like I'm doing a very PowerPoint-ish sort of thing with it. It's more of that presentation is mostly live demonstrations, and the PowerPoint was always kind of a joke in some sense, in that all it is just it's a means to drive from one place to one site to the next. But this is what it looks like. You can see we start off with top 10 free Web 2.0 tools for educators. We're going to bounce in. There's my actual presentation. Yes, you can put hyperlinks in. This is kind of undocumented in that you won't see it in the toolbars. But if you type in a URL with http:// after you save the presentation and reopen it, all of those will be live hyperlinks. So if I click through to these, they'll actually open up live. It just doesn't happen until you save it and close it and then reopen it. So what is Web 2.0? I can zoom over there. There's blog lines, and then here's my little description of blog lines. And then there's delicious, and so on. The one that I kind of like the most is, oops, and I did click on it. Hold on, let me zoom out just a little bit. Where is it? If you look at this presentation, there's a little dot right there. That's actually one of these little circles. And I just like the fact that you can just hide it inside a period. And the fact that while we're bouncing along, so here is, my opening screen right there. And if we zoom out just a little bit, here is all the different circles for all the different Web 2.0 tools we're talking about. There's Extra Normal, there's Shadows, and then that little one right there is Live Stream. And the very last one that I show is Prezi itself. And Prezi, this entire presentation, has actually been sitting inside the Prezi bubble. You see what I mean? So the entire presentation, we're bouncing from here to there. Say that again?
That little dot is like the navigation point?
Well, I'm sorry, say that one more time?
That dot that you were referring to is the way you navigate to the next...
Well, I navigate from point to point just using these arrow keys right here. What the point is, in this presentation, I'll zoom in on the JCut logo and then go over here to the JCut logo bubble.
Oh,
then
okay.
I'll go over to Drop.io, and then I'll go to the Drop.io bubble. Then I'll go to Edmodo, and go to the other, and then I'll go to Livestream. And the Livestream bubble is this tiny little period right there. If we zoom in and zoom in, we can see it. It's right there. See what I mean?
Yeah.
And then when we go to the Prezi one, the Prezi bubble itself, everything else has actually been sitting inside it the entire time. Do you know what I mean? And that's just what's kind of interesting about it. I wish I was a little more artistic, because I feel like I could probably do so much more with this. I feel like I'm barely scratching the surface with it. And in some sense, it's very PowerPoint-ish, just with a neat trick thrown in. The place where I'm doing a little bit of a better job is this one called Suited Storytelling. It's a different presentation I've been working on. And this one is about digital storytelling. And so you can kind of see I'm starting off with the little curtain thing and then moving along. And the first bunch of slides, in a sense, the first 3 or 4 different points of the presentation, they incorporate some videos. There's a little video. But as we're actually bouncing around through all these different points, we kind of zoom out afterwards to notice that the first 5 or 6 slides, or the first 5-10 minutes of the film, of the presentation, is all kind of inside this film can. Now I'm having some issues with the way I did it. I think I need to rebuild this one, because I think I tried to do a little too many layers per se. I'm having some issues. I'm not sure whether it's my own ineptitude or whether I'm pushing Prezi a little too hard. But I start off here, bounce around into here, and the whole idea being is that we're talking about digital storytelling, so we're framing it all within that film can, and then starting to move around behind it all. I think I'm doing a little bit better with that, but on the whole, I'm still kind of working on making things, taking advantage of it, doing something more like what you see with this Monopoly board, which I think is incredible.
Okay, can you play part of that one for the Monopoly one? Or one that you think is actually, a great example?
Yeah, this is actually someone's technology plan, at least when they wanted to present to their administrators what the technology plan was going to look like. They used this one. And I like the way they did this. So there's a 2009 to 2011 technology plan. Technology helps us pave the road. It's a combination of text and images. So right here, they've got this nice little shot of the kids looking down at the laptop. But when you actually zoom in, you see this video that are actually some of the teachers from the school district. What the classroom, in their mind, what is going to be happening in the classroom with respect to technology. And then they zoom in. Now, this is a great example where they're starting off with an image. They zoom in to see what's on the computer screen, and there's a bullet point. And then they zoom in even further on the computer screen, and there's the text. It's kind of behind there. And now they can zoom back out. There's a different building in the district, another teacher from that building, and then once again a bullet point, and then it wraps around to show more text. And there's your little graph to go along with it. Now, we can actually zoom out once again, and we can see what this looks like overall. Kind of a convoluted mess per se, but you get the idea that each one of these little bullets right here, as we go along here, is a different school and the vision that that school has for integrating technology in. And it's a great mix of both text and video in there. There's the high school. See how we're zooming in on the TV?
And you mentioned earlier, Steve, about the different way the brain has to think or process to create and when working with Prezi. Can you elaborate a little bit?
Say that one more time. I'm sorry, I missed the beginning.
You mentioned a bit about how the brain has to think differently to process and use Prezi and to think about the past and the flow when creating a Prezi presentation.
Mm-hmm. Well, for example, if we want to talk about, let's say, I'm trying to think of a good. Let's say we're talking about Van Gogh. If they're going to be studying art history and they're going to be looking at Van Gogh, typically maybe they would make a PowerPoint where they would go through a bunch of different Van Gogh's paintings and they would talk about the different points in his life and so on. But now, so long as it is an art class and we're talking about an artist, why not do something just a little bit more artistic? Yes, the important thing is we want them to know the information and we want them to be able to share that. But in the presentation itself, they can take a little bit of artistic license. Or have a little bit of an artistic license in it. So, for example, they could pull up an image of Starry Night, with a little village down below and so on. And then what they can actually do is they can put all the different pieces that they want to exhibit, all the different pieces of information they want to exhibit, and they can embed it in different pieces. So, for example, in one house, maybe it's got his biography where, where you actually zoom in on the house and behind there is, his early years. And it shows some of his paintings, it shows maybe a video about him, an audio clip or something about someone talking about him, and maybe some of the points. Then maybe we zoom out of that house and zoom up to the sun, and maybe that represents, some of his later years when he's burning a little bit more brightly. And you can zoom in on the different rays of sun and see different, paintings that he did during that period. And the whole thing could be still embedded within the painting without marring it per se, and it allows a sense of fluidity and a sense of creativity that you just don't get in PowerPoint. You just really can't do. Maybe you can do that sort of thing, but it certainly doesn't lend itself to it. It doesn't encourage it. It doesn't encourage you to take a photo like this and to think, well, if I want to show a video on this next one, where should I put it? Oh, yeah, the TV screen, that makes perfect sense. We'll just zoom in on there, and that's where that student is going to be talking. You see what I mean? So maybe we zoom in on the TV, and then maybe we zoom in on these students right over there, and maybe one of them has a cell phone. And while we would never be able to zoom in far enough to actually see what's on the cell phone screen, we can put whatever we want to right there, and we can zoom in on there. Even without it being a high-res image, we can zoom in on there as much as we want, and then once we get down to this point, if we're putting something else on there, it's kind of irrelevant that the photo is getting a little fuzzy per se. It allows us to kind of get creative with our imagery instead of just thinking of each photo or each bullet point as an instance in itself. We can kind of see a little bit more about how they all can be interconnected per se and related to each other. I feel like I'm very talking head in the clouds per se, but I really do kind of think this lends itself to some really interesting stuff. I actually heard somebody else mention the other day how great this would actually be for mind mapping. And I personally, it's a great example of how focused we get about these tools. I'm so focused on Prezi as a storytelling tool and as a presentation tool that it never really occurred to me that it would be kind of good for, just maybe throwing down thoughts and creating a mind map as we're going along. Teaching is telling, and if we collect all these different quotes, then we can just kind of layer them here, 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 and then eventually make a presentation out of it. You know what I mean? That it could actually be a great way to, a great inspiration style tool as well. Maybe it's not necessarily designed for it, but maybe it provides a different way to do your brainstorm or your brain dump and still get some immediate value out of it. Yeah, just a thought. But I think it's just a good example of, once again, how fixated we get in our schemas that it's hard sometimes for us to kind of look at things objectively and see them as they are versus how we expect them to be. I feel like I've been rambling on it as a race.
It kind of feels that way. That's been just excellent. And somebody asked, does Prezi offer templates that you can use to create games or instructional materials for the students?
Do you say templates?
Yes.
No, they don't offer templates. What they do is they offer these little style guides, but all these style guides is they'll make the text look different. You know what I mean? And the background look different. That's about it. And the frames look different. If you want to switch to the Japanese, you can do that too. I don't know whether that would work or not. But that's it. They do not really have any templates. They do have some galleries where you can scroll through and see, they call it the showcase. You can see what other people have done, which may provide you with some inspiration. But largely, I think the vast majority of Prezi users so far are doing kind of what I did with this this Top 10 Web 2.0 presentation, which is doing a flashier version of what we used to do in PowerPoint. Most of us are kind of stuck in these sort of schemas, and it's kind of hard to break them down and think of it as something different. There's very few examples in my mind so far of things like this Monopoly board or this poster sort of thing. And you really got to sift through the presentations to see them. This one's not a bad one in that it does kind of look at it as an overall project, but you're still just kind of moving around on it as in some sense as you would a PowerPoint. Instead of the bullets being one linearly, one laid out on top of the other, each of these in a sense are bullets. And it's cute that it kind of moves around and shifts the angle and you move around, from place to place. But I think this is still pretty low level Prezi, in my opinion. And most of the ones that you'll see in the showcase, I think, are pretty low level. There's a few that are pretty exceptional, and you really kind of got to dig to find them. If you look, just looking at it, you can see bubbles, bubbles, bubbles. All of these ones, these could very easily be a PowerPoint. They're neat in that they do things a little bit differently in terms of the fact that it flows around and such like that, which is all great. I'm sure Prezi is absolutely thrilled with it. But then every once in a while you see one that kind of breaks the mold. And that's, to me, where it really starts to get kind of interesting. It's hard. We've spent so many years thinking of presentations as slideshows that it's hard to kind of break it down and say what if. Another example that I love to use is if you're creating I've got an image of some flowers. And if we wanted to use the story, if you ever read the story "A House is a House for Me," It's a children's book where they talk about all sorts of things and what their different houses are. So a house is a house for a person, a glove is a house for a hand, a shoe is a house for a foot, a hole in the wall is a house for a mouse, and that sort of thing. Well, I use in some of my presentations the example of a garden where you kind of use it as a general activity in storytelling. What is a garden house for? Because there's so many different things kids can come up with that. A garden is a house for a flower, a garden is a house for a bee, a garden is a house for weeds, a garden is a house for whatever. But with Prezi, then, you can actually take that and you can make that happen where you can have just a general picture of a garden. And then if a kid comes up with the idea of a bee, you zoom in on the garden to the point that the bee is just kind of hidden in on there. But, you start off at the garden, you zoom in on the bee, then you zoom back to the garden and you zoom in on a flower, then you zoom back to the garden and you zoom in on a weed, and maybe they'd say an ant, and an ant isn't in that picture at all. You can put a picture of an ant either really small on there so it just looks like a little speck, and then zoom in on it, or you could put it actually behind there so you zoom through the flower if you wanted to. There's just all sorts of things that you could do where you're basically using it to kind of tell a story in a way that you just really can't do visually like you can do with a PowerPoint. I think it looks like we're kind of running. Starting to run low on time. I don't know. If we stop at the top of the hour, is there any other questions that I can answer? All right. Things are rather silent. And
somebody mentioned, can they download Prezi and then use it on a different computer?
Yeah, when you download
web-based.
When you download a Prezi, first of all, web-based, it works so far as I can tell. I think the only browser, for a while it wasn't working on Internet Explorer 6. I'm not sure whether it does right now or not, but I know that was an issue. But otherwise, when you download it, it gives you both a Mac player and a Windows player in the same bundle, and then all the media to go along with it. So you can just take that. It's actually a zip file, and you can take that to whatever computer you might need, or you can allow your, if you're doing this at a conference, you can allow your attendees to download it. Well, just one other point. I mean,
how long did it take you to become comfortable?
Oh, go ahead.
I'm sorry. How long did it take you to become comfortable with using Prezi?
I'm still kind of. It's not Prezi that's the issue anymore. Prezi itself, it didn't take me very long at all to become comfortable with it. I mean, if we go back over to this little section right here, there's only so many bubbles here. There's the path, there's the line, there's the frame, there's the text, and there's media. To upload an image or a movie or something like that. That's it. The tools themselves are nothing. I've shown you all the tools that there are and how they all function, with the exception of uploading an image or something like that. What's taken me a lot of time and that I'm still struggling with is breaking, like I said, breaking down that schema and forcing myself to stop thinking like a PowerPoint. And that's what I do so often. That's what's the most time consuming, is forcing myself to kind of step back and say, all right, so this is how I would used to do it in PowerPoint. What does Prezi allow me to do now differently, and how can I make that happen? That's what's taking me a lot more time. In terms of actually learning the tool and getting comfortable and creating something like this top 10, this took like no time at all. In fact, I believe I created this whole thing the first time around about an hour and a half before the presentation began. Before I actually had to get up there and start setting up my computer, I decided to convert my entire PowerPoint into Prezi, and literally it took me no more than like maybe 60, 75 minutes or so to do it. It's really a simple site. This is going to look really daunting, but it's not. This is what the path looks like for this presentation. It looks crazy. But you got to remember, all I did when all was said and done was I said, all right, I want to start here, and then go 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 here. And then when I actually finished, that's what it looked like. It's not like it was that complicated to do. And I've revamped this many times and just taken something out and putting something new in, and it's never been a big challenge to do so. Like I said, the biggest challenge is trying to figure out what the implications are for presentations and how we could do things differently. It's sort of like if you're so fixated on still images and on music and on paintings, and then all of a sudden someone shows you a video camera. What's the first thing that you try and do? Well, you take you take video of a flower, or you take video of a landscape that you're just so used to seeing anyway, and you don't really do anything with it. And it takes a while before you start getting that perspective and that eye for how video is different than these other flat mediums, that sort of a thing, and how you can combine that with other images and music and so on. The one thing I didn't really mention is in terms of media and all that, you can bring in images, no problem, takes images great. You can bring in movies as well. I have to double check because it's been a while since I've done a new one with movies. It used to be that you had to bring in .flv movies, flash video movies. There's plenty of converters out there. Mediaconverter.org will convert just about any video to an FLV file. So you would need to do something along those lines. But the other interesting thing about it is this actually will take any or just about any flash type file. There's an example when you go into Learn that blew me away. Learn Prezi in 4 minutes. I'm going to pull this one up from scratch because they had something in there that I'd never seen before, which was, where is it? Right there. You see the little butterflies? We can follow them. They got butterflies flitting around. Those are not movies. Those are actual flash files or flash documents of sorts. And I still haven't figured out how to create something that will go in there. But once again, that's a whole other layer that not really anybody, I haven't seen really anybody tapping into, the fact that you can add animation and motion into these animated objects into there, which just, once again, adds a whole other layer. You know what I mean? So I hope that answers the question of how long did it take. The short answer was an hour. The long answer is I'm still figuring it out. Good.
And this has just been fascinating to see, and especially the point that you brought about the butterflies, adding the animation, the play animation kind of things. I just think that's great. I'm going to go ahead and kind of wrap up the formal session, but Steve, if you have a few minutes to stick around, we can take questions from people. I know we kind of ran out of time, but if you have to leave, we totally understand that, everyone. But if you can stay, hopefully Steve has time to stay after the hour.
Yeah,
no problem.
Absolutely.
Okay, I'm going to close out your application sharing. And then we'll take questions in just a second. Our next show is on September 19th, and the next show of the Classroom 2.0 Live Beginner Series will be on September 16th at the same time, 8 p.m. That's this week, Eastern, or Thursday at 10 a.m. Eastern for the third part in that series, and I think it might be the final part, about RSS feeds, tagging, and feed readers. Our next show is going to be on September 19th. We'll be talking about electronic portfolios, or e-portfolios, for students and teachers. And we'll be asking, what are they? How do we create them? How do we use them? And our special guest will be Dr. Helen Barrett. And Steve's created a number of networking and community sites. And as part of his interview series on September 15th, Tuesday, he'll be interviewing Ann Gillerin on the E20 program. The time has yet to be determined. And on September 17th, on Thursday evening, 3 p.m. Pacific and 6 p.m. Eastern, Michael Horn will be interviewed, and he'll be talking about a series on InnoSight's online case studies, and Steve will be conducting those interviews. And just a reminder that when you exit this session today, there'll be a link. It'll automatically pop up to our Classroom 2.0 live survey. So if you could take a few minutes to fill that out and give us some feedback on today's show or future shows, we would greatly appreciate that. And we want to give a special thanks to Steve Dembo for joining us today, and to Steve Hargadon, who is the founder of Classroom2.0.com and thefutureofeducation.com and Conversations.net, and I could keep going, but I won't. Thank you to everybody who participated in the show today, and especially to Illuminate for providing this forum to us, and we're greatly appreciative of that. And so now, Steve, I'm going to pass it back to you. And as I'm looking in the chat, I see that Howie had a question about, did you convert the PowerPoint into Prezi? Or he's asking about a converter.
No, there was no converter. I actually just basically took it was a pretty simplistic PowerPoint, and I just took the time to recreate it. So I went back and grabbed all the images that I used in the screenshots and just typed in the text, and literally, I mean, I basically created it from scratch in about 60 to 75 minutes based on the PowerPoint that I already had. There is no converter. It just doesn't, it's just too radically different. And I forgot to mention this, with the premium version of Prezi, if you do pay for it, and which, I should point out is not cheap. The free version is all wonderful. The cheapest version is a yearly subscription of I think it's about $70 per year, and then the more expensive one is about $250 per year. The one that's $250 per year does actually have actually I believe both of them do. No. The Pro version, the $250 year one, actually has an offline editor as well, so you can actually create Prezis offline. But it's a pretty steep price tag, to say the least.
Kind of. And Deb, you had a question or a comment that you'd like to share, Deb?
Yes, really quickly, do they have any educator discounts? How would someone use this in the classroom, or would they just use it as the trial? And would each child then have to be their own user?
You can create, you could create a class account and let the students all log in with that. Multiple people can be logging in and editing Prezis at the same time. When Prezi was in closed private beta, I gave my username and password to about maybe I shouldn't be admitting to this on a recording, but to about 10 or 15 different people so that they could all try it out. So there is no problem with that, and like I said, so long you have a cap of 100 megabytes of space in the free version, but beyond that, you can go ahead and most people can create it. As of right now, they do not have any educational pricing. What I do strongly suggest each of you do is, if you are interested in educational pricing, take the time to send the developers an email. I can't tell you how many times I've seen Web 2.0 sites that had no educational presence whatsoever wind up changing their stance or offering up pricing or creating an educational side to it based on the feedback from educators. So I really think that's important with every Web 2.0 tool. If you think that there's merit to it in education, but there's issues with the way it is right now, take the time to email the developers. Most of these are very, very, very small companies, less than a dozen people, and it's not hard at all to get to the top level to the point where someone can make a decision like that and run with it. And I've seen it again and again, from Animoto to Blogster to VoiceThread and so on. So definitely take the time to write into these developers.
Would you get that information from their site?
Peter is here.
Yeah, go to Prezi.com and or just about any site. Scroll right down to the bottom and look for something that says "Contact Us." They have it right there. You can. I wouldn't go through the support links. When in doubt, if you can't find any other contact, go through the sales links. Go through the sales links and say, this is something we want to do with students. We want to get the students hooked on it instead of having them use PowerPoint. So when they go off to college, they're all going to be using Prezi and buying subscriptions and all that. That will definitely appeal to their other side. And the other piece of it is, the other argument, if you want to make an argument, is that it lends the site a sense of legitimacy that schools are using it, and it's not just getting used by regular public for create Saturday Night Live parodies or whatever else. It's one of those things that It's the altruistic side of it. It makes a good human interest story, and a lot of sites are willing to make those sort of accommodations just for that reason alone. So, yeah, so if you can't find another link, go through the sales link and drop them a line.
Steve, as you were presenting it, it appeared sort of Adobe-like with layers, vector graphics versus Microsoft.
That's a really interesting analogy, and I would say yes, but I put on the asterisk because you don't need to know what a layer is or what a vector graphic is in order to take advantage of the benefits of them. It's taking the technical complexity out of it and just keeping it rather simple. You know what I mean? In that, yeah, but the way that things do resize and are manipulated, it is very it is akin to an Illustrator sort of thing. Yeah, no, I think you're dead on.
These are the kinds of things I love to give to kids and say, you know what, I don't know how to use this. What can you learn from it and show me? And I find that that's just so powerful. Critical thinking challenge.
To me, I think you hit a great word right there, challenge, in that, you know, you can even point out to them, you know, what does this allow you to do differently, to do that you couldn't do before? Challenge me by doing something that you couldn't do in PowerPoint. You know what I mean? And try and get creative. You know, and giving the points, you know, I saw, I think it was Paula that posted a link to some Prezi examples. One of the examples was a spelling list, where a kid had put the spelling list in there, and I thought they did a nice job. But the idea of doing the spelling list in Prezi is really interesting. How many different ways can you come up to show, to demonstrate what, you know, the words that are on there in terms of them as vocabulary words and as spelling words, and so on? What could they really, how could they make the spelling list so much more than just, you know, whatever, a typical spelling list? That could be a challenge where, you know, maybe the spelling of the spelling words maybe is a 10 points, but the creativity side of it is maybe equal, another 10 points. Whereas how often do you apply creativity to the spelling assignments? You know what I mean?
Definitely, and those are great questions. Did you have another question, Deb, or a comment?
No, I'm sorry, I didn't put my hand down.
Okay, no problem. Just checking. Thank you so much, Deb, for joining in and asking those questions. If anybody else has a question, they're welcome to click on the hand and use the microphone to ask their question, or they can just type in the question in the chat. And it looks like Peter Halleck's here from Prezi, and thank you for coming, Peter. We greatly appreciate it. Steve's done a great job of using this and promoting it. And we definitely are interested in the educational version, primarily for students that use like their work or pictures of themselves in their presentation to protect their identity and keep things safe and private. Even though with the free version, yes, we can download as much as we want for free, but some of those things need to be kept private for younger students or work that's been done in the classroom and copyrighted material and so forth. Some of those things need to be kept private. So that's kind of why we are asking for an educational version instead of just using the free public version.
If I can just interject real quick, one of the things, since I do work for Discovery Education, you know, we have a library of 40,000 plus videos for teachers, and unfortunately, due to the rights that the publishers contain, we don't have permission to allow teachers to republish those videos out there on the internet. However, if they were to create something and keep it private, then the students could certainly use those videos in their projects. And that's how they get by with putting videos in things like VoiceThread and Animoto and other such Web 2.0 sites. Or Glogster, there's some phenomenal blogs that have been created using Discovery Education video clips, but because those were kept private and put behind a password, they're legal. You know, they're kosher with our our publishers. So I mean that's just one example for why, you know, sometimes an educational version is kind of helpful. Educators quite simply just have different needs. So
absolutely. And yes, the copyright issues were the main thing that I was thinking of if they wanted to use, you know, any kind of educational video or document and so forth. And that's why the importance of the privacy comes into play. And you're so right on, Steve. I think this would be great if the educational version were considered and at a price that teachers can afford. I know that's not much, but there's some great ideas and things going on that I think people would really like to use Prezi to do. Do we have any more questions from somebody that they would like to ask Steve via the chat or with your microphone? Okay. All right, well, go ahead. You have the microphone.
Thanks for the show. Are you a Prezi convert now, or do you still plan to use PowerPoint or Keynote in the future, or that's it?
That's a really interesting question. I would say that I'm getting some serious echo here. Okay, there we go. There are times where I still do use PowerPoints, but primarily the times when I use PowerPoints, and the only reason that I still use PowerPoint is if there are presentations I create in PowerPoint that are a little more elaborate. I haven't taken the time to move them to Prezi, and just to be brutally honest, I'm a procrastinator, and oftentimes I'm doing things at the last minute. And when that's the case, it's sometimes easier for me to tweak something in PowerPoint than to recreate it in Prezi. If I create something new, when I'm creating new presentations, I'm doing them in Prezi. That's it. I mean, unless I don't currently have the offline editor, so sometimes I need to work on a plane, and maybe I'll use PowerPoint still. But other than that, when I'm creating a new presentation, yes, I am using Prezi. I don't feel there's a compelling reason to use PowerPoint over Prezi. I can't think of any significant features that PowerPoint has that I can't do within Prezi, or that I couldn't use by doing a combination. And I just, Prezi just feels a little bit more natural. It feels right to me. And plus, I mean, I hate to say it like this because I know we should be above this, but listen, I'm a presenter, and part of what I do is, there's a little bit of showmanship involved in there. I've got to keep the audience entertained and such, along with the content, that is part of it. And the fact is, when you're showing a presentation done with Prezi to people, especially people that have never seen it before, there is a huge wow factor. People are on the edge of their seats trying to figure out how you're doing it. It's a magic trick. They're trying to figure out how the heck you're doing that magic trick. They know you did not make the Statue of Liberty actually disappear, but it certainly looks like it. They know this is not PowerPoint. It's not Keynote. What the heck is it? And it's just keeping them on the edge of the seat throughout the presentation. And I'll always, I'll usually save that for the very end to kind of explain what it is and how I did it. But you know what? Just the stage person in me really enjoys that. So, I mean, just to be brutally honest, there is that. Oh, I love that idea, Tammy. Take a tour through the frog. That's a fantastic idea. Think about that. How could Prezi be used for lab reports, especially when you can combine media along with the images, along with the text? What a fantastic way to do your frog dissection lab reports. Oh, Tammy, please, if you do that, you have to email it to me. Man, do I want to see that.
That would be fantastic. That would be awesome. And if anybody can do it, Tammy can do it. And it would be first class. And yes, Tammy, when you do that, please share it with us, because I think that would just be phenomenal. I know you do a fantastic job. She is awesome with graphics and clip art, Steve. I mean, if anybody can do a professional and fantastic job, it would be Tammy.
Oh, I saw a question from Peggy asking whether ADHD students have problems viewing. Whether ADHD students have problems viewing Prezi presentations. The answer is no, unless, because I have totally screwed up Prezi, one presentation that I did in Prezi where I accidentally turned the circles. Yeah, basically, I did a 360, or maybe not quite a 360 on the circles. I turned them 359 degrees. So every time I went to that circle, it would actually spin a full cycle around. The entire screen would spin 360 degrees before coming to a stop. And every time I went to a bullet point, it did the full 360 degrees before coming to a stop. And I got to admit, even I got a little nauseous watching that. But that's not the fault of Prezi. That's the fault, that's user error. So just to keep that in mind.
Yeah, somebody mentioned, yeah, you can be kind of dizzying, depending upon how you structure and set your paths.
But I think a lot of that is when people are using this, people are, especially that they're excited by it, they're getting used to it, and they're just using the spinning for the sake of using the spinning. They're turning the text on its side, not for any deliberate purpose or artistic reason, but just because they can, because it's so cool. And that that's part of the learning curve in some sense. That's part of it's kind of like part of learning to use paints. At first you're just using those broad strokes, and it takes you a little while to learn how beautiful subtlety can be. And I think when we all start using, that's why you see so many Prezis in the main window in the showcase, where people have just created the bubbles and people are just flying here and flying there and back and forth, and it does get a little dizzying, and it takes a little bit of time to kind of settle down and do it with a sense of a sense of, I don't know what the word I'm looking for, deliberateness, if you will. Yeah, that's a great point, Peggy, about the flying text and animations in PowerPoint. Same sort of thing.
Let me see. I think I've asked all the questions that I saw go by. Does anybody else have a question that they would like to ask Steve or share with Steve? I'm going to go ahead and put up the presentation that Steve did at NEC, just to show you real quick in a web tour how it moves, how the path moves and how it's smoother than with the application sharing. With application sharing, it gets to be kind of bandwidth intensive. And even the web tour is a little bit slow. When you're watching the actual presentation online, you don't have the lag that you have here. But this is just a quick idea to show you some of the things that you can do with Prezi, and this is by no means the most, all of its full potential.
Dad, when you
so
say
it is a really excellent presentation tool. And Steve, you did a fantastic job presenting today.
Thanks, I appreciate it. It's fun stuff. And like I said, there are so many Web 2.0 tools out there, but in my opinion, there are so few that really break the mold, that really give you something different, something original, and it's just completely outside of our traditional experiences per se. And I think Prezi fits the bill there. It really is one that it changes the playing field, if you will. So it's worth checking out.
Yeah, I just think it's fantastic. And when I saw it, I thought, oh, we need to have you on because it's just so unique.
Thanks, I appreciate it. It's been fun.
And Peter, we're glad that you created this tool for us, or you and the other developers. So thank you for doing that, and we're glad that you joined us today, Peter. Are there any other questions before we let Steve go and close out the session? If not, we would love for you to join us next Saturday when we talk about student portfolios. And I could easily see students creating a portfolio kind of Prezi presentation that would really wow, I think, college recruiters and so forth when they share their portfolio with people or on a job and so forth. So I think that's really a unique tool that's been created.
You know, Peggy, you make an interesting point. That'd be a great addition to an e-portfolio, or this could be the actual portfolio itself. You see, we've kind of seen the evolution of the resume in some sense to become the social media resume, the living, breathing web page that's pulling in all your different links from Facebook and Twitter and such. I've seen some really interesting resumes on Flickr that are done like in graph form or this or that, non-traditional. Well, Prezi could be another way to sort of do that, to be your portfolio itself and have it embedded in it all the different artifacts from your work and just create in a very artistic, creative way. And that could be really interesting.
I definitely agree. I could really see some fantastic stuff that people could really do with Prezi and really impress, college recruiters with their kids or however or whatever audience or venue that you're using Prezi for. All right, if there aren't any more questions, then we'll let Steve go. And again, thank you, Steve, so much for joining us today.
Oh, my pleasure. This has been fun.
Thank you also, Peter. And Peter, we definitely will. And there's Peter's email address in the chat so that we can and hopefully deluge Peter with emails to create an educational version for us. And so we're going to go ahead and close out. And we again thank you so much and hope that you'll join us next week. And then if any of your students happen to create items with Prezi, please share those with us next week or in the future. We have a Digo link group at Digo, the Classroom 2.0 Live. So be sure to join that, and then you can share your Prezi presentation links with us so that they're semi-private just with our group. And that would be really wonderful if you could do that. So again, thank you everybody for joining us today, this afternoon, and have a great day and weekend, and we will see you next Saturday, everyone.